And so many people laugh at that and whatever, but he's just talking about if you see an opportunity, take it. And that's what I did is I closed my book. I got a C on that test, but that started and facilitated me to the career to where I'm at now. Multiple governments have said, hey, free labor is not a thing. And you need to pay them. Well, somehow in this industry, we've gotten around that. And I don't think that that's a admirable thing at all. If your athletic department is unable to sustain itself, then the money has to come from the university. And if the money is coming from the university, well, then what are they not funding? It's kind of funny that you can read something 5 times, and unless you are ready for it, you're not going to get it. Sometimes it's more important to find out what doesn't work than it is what does, because then you don't waste your time again. The body doesn't care what that stimulus is. It just cares that it's getting that speed, strength stimulus. I think we need to have more difficult conversations, but we also need to be respectful and realize, that and be able to see things from the other person's point of view. So I think we need to have difficult conversations with empathy. Societies become great when old men plant trees that they will never know the shade of. And if we were to, as a field and as a society, go back to that, to doing what is going to be best for the next person, how can I make this better for them? Then we're going to make a drive as a society.
Welcome to this new episode. Before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor for the podcast, Moxy Monitor. If you've been following my work, you know that the Moxy is a tool that I use a lot for testing, but also for everyday training and coaching. For those who don't know about the Moxy Monitor yet, it's a NIRS device that measures muscle oxygen saturation and blood volume in real time. It's a non-invasive sensor that is placed on the skin and can be worn during any training or sporting activity. Motocross riders and climbers wear it on their forearms. Hockey players on the ice, swimmers can wear it in water. I've used it to test rugby players, CrossFit athletes, endurance athletes, and more. The Moxy allows you to individualize work and rest periods, optimize load, reps and sets, identify training thresholds in real time, and even correct movement based on what the data shows you. You can also use the Moxy Monitor to determine an athlete's energetic limiting factor and their individual training zones. Using this process, I can now target the athlete's limiter with precision in order to improve their performance without adding unnecessary volume to their program. You can view and collect the data on your Garmin watch and can also pair the Moxy with other physiological testing products such as the VO2 Master, Pnoe, and Cosmed VO2 systems. The Moxy is a product I've been using for many months with great success, and I highly recommend it to any coach who's interested in digging a little bit deeper on the physiological side of health, fitness, or performance. You can use the coupon UPSIDE at checkout for a 5% discount on moxymonitor.com/shop. That's UPSIDE, UPSIDE, for a 5% discount. With that said, let's get into the show. Okay, Bryan, we're on the podcast live. How you doing, man?
I'm doing well. How are you, sir?
It's a pleasure to have you on. I've read a lot of your material over the years, and it's really a great pleasure to have you on the podcast today.
So you're somebody who no longer suffers from insomnia. I've cured another. I'll tell you what.
Tell me more about that.
Oh, no, it's just a joke I picked up from Tudor Bompa. It's like, yeah, if you have, I've got the perfect cure for insomnia. If you are an insomniac, buy my book. You read it, you will fall asleep immediately. So that's...
I stay quite awake, so they have to be, maybe better than Bompas. I don't know.
Yeah, maybe so. Maybe so. I don't know. I wouldn't say that. Yeah, you said it, not me.
Yeah, exactly. So I read from your bio that you've been in the industry for 23 years now.
Something like that. It's just 98.
Yeah, that's nearing quarter of a century. That's quite a number.
Yeah. Hey, there's gray in my beard. I've been doing this longer than a lot of my undergraduate students, and even some of my graduate students have been alive. So, yeah.
How was the industry when you started? What did it look like? What did it feel like compared to what we're living now?
Yeah. So, I got in at the end of the previous era. So you always hear about there was, one strength coach, 23 sports, 500 athletes, coaching everybody at the same time. And that's whenever I came in. And that's why I was able to get in and get the experience I did. I actually started as an undergraduate. For people like, wait a second, you graduated high school in 1997 and in 98 you were a strength coach? Yeah, because it was different, because they were desperate for somebody who knew how to lift weights, knew technique, Wasn't afraid to put weight on the bar, wasn't afraid to push things. Um, and yeah, so it was just my whole career, I'm not the smartest person, I'm not the brightest person, I'm not the nicest person, I'm not anything. I've just been very fortunate to be in the right place at the right time. And if I weren't sitting in the one spot that I happened to be that day, nobody would know the name Bryan Mann in the field of strength and conditioning, because I probably wouldn't be in the field, at least not to the extent that I am now.
So
um,
what were your first jobs, or the first thing that you had to do when you started coaching that, like you said, maybe put you in the spot for what came down the line afterwards?
Well, exactly what had happened was, I'll tell the whole story. I don't really care. I was skipping one class to study for another, and I was hungover. So, there was a Taco Bell in the stadium on campus. So we had a stadium on campus, which, I don't know how things are over in Switzerland, but most of the time in the United States, the football stadiums are going to be off campus because they just take up so much space,
Mm-hmm.
and you got to put up buildings and keep campus centralized if you can. Well, we had an on-campus stadium, so if you're going to have a stadium, you need to be able to do things in there the rest of the year to be able to use the building. So they actually had a Taco Bell and some other things in there as a part of the rec center. So I was having an endless supply of Diet Pepsi and then bean burritos to keep me, they were like 89 cents at the time or something. So that was to quell the easy queasy stomach, and the Diet Pepsi was for, to keep me going. And one of my friends from high school was on the football team, and he stopped by, talked to me, and I had just won. I can't remember if it was nationals or I would call it like a double. Let me turn that off here. Double A or triple A master's degree.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, Hold on one second. I'm very sorry.
You go for it.
Whenever it's the dean, you got to respond.
You do. You can tell the dean that he's live on the podcast.
Yeah, right. Yeah. I just did in the message.
That way he knows where to listen next time.
Yep. But long story short, so he was on the football team, and I'll close this email. Let me close this email, because now I'm having to open two because stuff's not getting through, as you know. But so I'm sitting there, and I just won. It's like I would say it's like double A or triple A world championships.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't WPO, it wasn't IPF, it was a drug tested federation. So I had just won nationals or worlds in that. And then I came back, and I'm sitting at the table, and he's talking to me about the competition. And Rick Perry, who's now at Northwest, well, I think he's still at Northwestern, was the head strength coach. And he comes up and he starts talking with Fitz, and Fitz is like, yeah, this guy just won, this powerlifting championship. He's like, oh shit, you want a job? So I'm like, well, I already knew that I wanted to be a strength coach from being 13 and going to a strength and conditioning camp and falling in love with it and finding out that's a profession. So I knew exactly what I wanted to do. And I'm a big believer in that. There's an old quote by a baseball player in the U.S. named Yogi Berra. And it was, if you see a fork in the road, pick it up. And so many people laugh at that and whatever, but he's just talking about, if you see an opportunity, take it. And that's what I did. Is I closed my book. I got a C on that test, but that started and facilitated me to the career to where I'm at now. Now I say it that way because if you are 19 years old, you shouldn't have your own teams, right? I did. I was coaching people who were older than me.
Mm-hmm.
And, that's just the way that it goes there. So, coming out, by the time that I graduated, yes, I was on the 6-year plan. There were some incidents that I'm not going to say anything recorded that made me have to take another couple of years, but it did have to do with my temper. That by the time that I graduated, well, I'd already been basically a full-time assistant for 4 years.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And then whenever I go on to be a graduate assistant, well, now I can come in and just, do the things that I've done. I don't have to spend the time developing on the coaching side of it. I can develop on the science side of it and progress from there.
Do you feel like, do you feel like that was maybe an upper hand that you had to kind of reverse that approach? Well, no, because you did your studies in the meantime, but you were already coaching. You had years of coaching under your belt. when you
Yeah.
came out versus maybe the other people that just had the books?
Yeah, I think that expanded it because also I say that read the books later. Well, no, I mean I was already reading at that point. Rick had a shelf of photocopies of translated Soviet texts and some of the really old. We were joking about Bompa earlier on the theories and methodologies of periodization, the old orange cover, and he made. I say made. I think he made me do the first one, but then I willingly did all the rest. So it wasn't that I wasn't reading and growing at that point. I mean, shoot, I read Super Training as an undergraduate. That's where we are. And that wasn't even my degree,
Yeah.
area. It was health education
Hmm.
because they didn't have strength and conditioning as a major, else I would have done that. But then, oddly enough, all the rest of my degrees were in psychology because that's whenever I could attend the classes. So I got a PhD at convenience, I guess you would say, versus one that's in the area that I'm interested in. But it's going through the years of seeing opportunities and picking it up, and
Hmm.
just I saw that fork in the road. I picked it up every time. I'm an opportunist. And I don't hesitate to say that some people are, oh, that sounds like a bad thing. It's like, well, is it? Is every time there's an opportunity, you take it and you grow from it? That's negative that you're looking at things, isn't but the way that I view an opportunist and the way somebody else views it might be two different things. So then that kind of goes back to that speaking different languages, right? So like an example that I use with my students here in any of my classes is that you've got to have the same vernacular, because if you
Hmm.
don't, you're going to be having a problem. So I always say if you're so I live here in Miami, and if you hear people talking about exito, what are you going to do? You're going to be, everybody always says, well, I'm looking for the exit. Like, that's the problem, because they're talking about how to find success. Exito means success in Spanish, and you're looking for the exit. So that's the thing. You've just got to grow up and go through that and learn it and all that. Yeah.
Now, I guess there's opportunities, and then there's taking advantage of people to try and get to places, and those are two different things. You can
Yeah.
pick up on opportunities, like you said, without it having a negative impact on the people around you. Sometimes it's even a positive. I mean, it's going to be a
Yeah.
positive thing for you, and it should be first and foremost, because you have to, as much as we like to. I see what you're saying. There's a negative connotation about thinking about
Yeah.
yourself and trying to advance your own interests. But at the end of the day, if you're not, and you're always playing second or playing for others, and you're never actually thinking about yourself, is it actually worth it? Are
Yeah.
you
No,
gonna
it's not.
get something
Yeah.
out of it? And you so you have to, you could go as far as saying you have to be a little bit selfish at times, but when it's there, you have to go for it. Like you said, you have to pick up the fork.
Yeah, yeah, you gotta take it. So I'm not looking for grandmas to rob or anything like that. I'm not looking for anything like that. I'm looking, like, if there's then people ask, like, oftentimes, well, how did you get so high up in the NSCA? Because they asked, would somebody want to do something, and I did it, and it worked, and it went well, and they asked again, and I said yes, and they asked again, and I said yes, and that's how it's happened. It's um, Thomas Edison gave one of my favorite quotes of all time. Few people find success because it's dressed in overalls and looks like hard work. And I see those things as opportunities to learn and grow and become who I don't know. It's not like become who I'm supposed to be. Not anything like that, but be able to progress further in life as a result of that. I'm always looking for opportunities to be able to do things better for my kids and make sure they don't have the same, not the same challenges that I had growing up.
Mhm.
So, I want to make sure that we do that.
How do you balance out, and maybe how did you balance that out early in your career, and how do you do it now? Balance out those opportunities that might not come with a huge financial reward right away, but that do, have a lot of potential down the line. Like you said, maybe, I don't know, again, what you had in terms of arrangement in those different opportunities, but it probably wasn't paying all the bills right
No,
right from day one. So how do you balance that out early in your career versus now, and how do you recommend that, or that how do you advise that coaches usually do that as they go along?
man. Yeah, that's a good question. I didn't balance them out. I just kept taking things on, and the while I was the college strength and conditioning special interest group chair, I was posting 3, 4, 5 times a day in that group,
Hmm.
and I'd never got a dime for it. And everybody always thought that I did, and I didn't. So, I mean, like, I was just taking on and doing those sorts of things. I wouldn't, how to balance it out, man, I don't know, man. Somebody's got to figure it out. Here's eventually how I had to do it is that, and sometimes I feel bad because there's a lot of people that have gotten their feelings hurt over this, but I've just had to set like give myself to where it's like, yeah, I'll do a few things for free for a year, but, super cheap. But, there was a time whenever I was gone every weekend, right? So I wasn't seeing my family or anything like that. So it's like, my thought is, and you've got to figure this out for yourself. If it's not worth it to miss my kids for that long, I'm not doing it, financially or something like that.
Hmm.
Now I'm not away doing the speaking engagements that I used to. I'm gone maybe, you know, one long one a year. That's the NSCA National Conference. And sometimes I'll do the coaches conference. I mean, I've been doing the coaches conference too, but national usually is just a longer meeting.
Hmm.
Um, and that's going to be the only long one that, I'm going to be away from my kids they aren't paying bank, as much as I hate to say that it's about the money, if I'm not doing something that's not going to help my kids, and me being away from them is not helping them, so
Yeah,
if,
it's a fair. I mean, yeah. Again, that negative connotation. Thinking about yourself and making money. For some reason, making money is a bad thing.
yeah, it's
And
supposed to be, money's the root of all evil, right? But, being nice doesn't pay my rent.
no,
Uh,
exactly.
yeah. So that's, I've got, and this is where the balance comes from. It's the balance of, I'm going to be a dad. And if there's something that is going to keep me from being a dad for that weekend, it's going to make my kid's life a little bit better. And, because that's my number one priority now. And it's all about balancing out those priorities. So, that's where it comes down to. Now, before I had kids, I was doing everything for free and, doing all these things. And shoot, if I would have started charging back then, I might not be, sitting here in this office that I got a promotion. I'm now the program director here at University of Miami. I got to move my stuff downstairs to a nicer office. Well, uh, if I would have started making money back then, I wouldn't be moving my offices down there. I'd probably be sitting out on the beach somewhere, kicking my feet up. But that's not the way that things go, because that's just not how I am.
Mhm.
Uh, it's not how I was raised. Uh, I was raised by Depression era grandparents, basically, and that's and Midwesterners at that, Oklahoma Dust Bowl people. So that's how I was raised, is to do those sorts of things rather than worry about the money and all that. Take care of people and try and do the right thing.
I've, I've
And
always, I've always found that there, at least for me, there's always been good quote unquote which returns, or maybe not returns, but let's frame it another way. When you start something out and you're not the best at it and you're still learning, then it might make more sense to take on some opportunities that maybe you won't pay now, but will give you the experience that will allow you to charge well later. And then once
yeah,
you reach either a certain level of competency or after a certain amount of time, now you can start saying, okay, now I can actually start charging and make something out of this. I guess that's maybe not going through the formal way of getting a degree and then getting a job for that degree and then getting paid according to your education status, but kind of going the background way around it, if there is one. And do you think maybe young coaches that don't have the responsibilities that you talked about, having a family, have kids that you have to provide for, and for whom you want to, like you said, bring something more than maybe uh, what you were able to have? Do you think they should take every opportunity to work for free? Do you think there's a limit? Can you work for free too much? Is it a bad thing for the industry? I've heard that as well a few times. What do you think?
I think that it's. So I'll talk. I think we got to separate this out. So whenever I'm saying that working for free and doing things, I mean like going and doing educational and things like that, doing the
Mm-hmm.
talks. That if I'm gone for 3 days and you pay me $100, to me that's damn near working for free,
Mm-hmm.
right? Yeah, 24 hours, 3 days of work, $100, that's what, $4 an hour. And, that's less than minimum wage. That's half a minimum wage in the US. I don't know how it goes in Switzerland. I think you guys got a far better wage, in standard of living there than we do right now, but for a lot of people. It's not worth it, but that would be for me now. But back then, no, absolutely. So I think that those small things to do to get yourself out there, to build your network, you absolutely have to take those. If you don't, you're doing yourself a disservice. Now, on the flip side of that, I think that the volunteer internships are oh gosh, what is going to be the best term for this? That they are, golly, I'm trying to think of the words to use without profanity.
You're allowed to swear. You can fucking swear on my
Yeah,
podcast.
that is, it's bullshit whenever you get down to it. I understand that some programs like, well, I don't want to have to pay these people and take money out of my budget that I don't know if they're going to work out, if they're going to be lazy, they're going to do all these other things. It's like, yeah, but you're also keeping people who would be good from being able to get into the profession, because now, I had to save for multiple years, knowing that I wanted to be a strength and conditioning coach. I had to save up for years to be able to go do an internship, to know that I wasn't going to be able to work anything else during this period, because I'm going to be going 60, 70, 80 hours a week there. So of course I can't have a side job, because there's 100 and what, 7 times 24 is 168, right? So if I'm working 80 hours, well, that's half. And then I needed to have an hour a day each way. So that takes in another 12 for travel. Well, there's only so many hours in a day, and you got to sleep at some point too. So all I was doing was working, and I think that's a travesty, because we keep some people from getting into the industry. We might miss the Van Gogh or the Einstein of strength and conditioning because of that entry point. So I'm not a fan of that. The multiple governments have said, hey, free labor is not a thing, and you need to pay them. Well, somehow in this industry we've gotten around that, and I don't think that that's a admirable thing at all. That's like the billionaire who decides to not pay his taxes because it's a game to him and he just wants to see what he can get away with, while other people have to starve because of his decisions.
Do you see a way around that? Do you see a way to change this? Is it that, I don't know, some school, some organization needs to just start paying their interns to kind of raise the bar and set that standard, and others will follow? Is that enough? What do you think?
I don't think that the only thing that it's going to change is going to be from policy, because it's, why are you going to buy the cow if you get the milk for free? That sort of thought process. It's like, okay, well, now the universities, who most of them are already operating in a deficit, there's only a few athletic departments that actually turn money without creative financial
Endeavors?
smoke and mirrors. Yeah, well, no, not even endeavors, but like I won't say that they're doing anything illegal, but they might be moving money from reserves into their regular budget to make it appear as if they've got that they had a cash flow positive year. Well, when they really didn't. I've seen a lot of that. So you're looking at a cash strapped industry to do that. Well, of course, I'm on the, everybody's freaking COVID, whatever. But if you're in a cash industry, that there's not going to be anything unless there's a threat of a greater penalty coming down financially. I don't see, from being on both sides of that, being now academic, being in athletics for 20 years, I just don't see that happening.
Yeah. What came to mind when you were saying this is that, should athletic department be expected to turn a profit? Does every department have to turn a profit? Is there an argument where, maybe there's other areas that can and should turn a profit, and others that are beneficial to the organization as a whole in other ways, and so that financial gain in and of itself doesn't necessarily have to be a thing? Is there a balance there?
Yeah, so the balance typically goes into And again, speaking just for the United States, that typically you'll have one or two programs that generate revenue, right? That are revenue
Mm,
generating sports,
mm,
and they are the ones that do the budget for everybody else. Well, if your athletic department is unable to sustain itself, then the money has to come from the university. And if the money is coming from the university, well, then what are they not funding? Are they not funding what academic program is not funded as a result of that?
mm,
So really the balancing of the budget is why more and more administrators, athletic directors, started coming from the business world rather than coaching world,
mm,
because whenever you get down to it, you got to keep the doors open. And
mm,
if the boat's not staying afloat, it's going to sink.
mm,
So you're going to have things that produce revenue. Otherwise, the department's going to fold. Now, um, a lot of this actually comes back to the funding models. And, back with public funding, I remember that, gosh, back in 2007, there were complaints about, I think we were being funded at half of what we had been previously through the state.
mm,
So if the state is no longer funding higher education, there is no room for error. There is no room for, they're for things that would be a revenue suck and a revenue drain. And that's why I think you're seeing a lot of sports that are being cut now in the United States from universities due to COVID and due to the pandemic, that they were not in a good spot to start.
mm,
And now, I mean, they're hemorrhaging money. And people are like, oh, well, you can't do that. You're taking away the opportunity. Yeah, well, we're getting ready to lose the opportunity for everybody.
mm,
So we're going to have to, stop the bleeding somehow. You got to apply a tourniquet, and that's never a good thing.
mm.
If the tourniquet busts out, somebody's in trouble, and that's where a lot of sports are right now.
Uh, Going back to your earlier experiences, you mentioned the S&C camp that you took part in when you were young. Is there a
Yeah.
coach that really kind of marked you at that time, or was it just the general environment of the camp that drew you to the industry?
Yeah. So there was actually three coaches there that were. I mean, it was ran by three coaches, and all of them were pretty equal, one more than the other. The three coaches were Russ Ball, who used to be with the Kansas City Chiefs as a strength and conditioning coach, and now he's a front office guy for the Green Bay Packers and NFL. Both of those are NFL teams. Sean, where's the majority of your listenership?
A little bit all over the place. I've got half my podcast in French, so for those who do understand English, they'll listen from here or
Okay.
Switzerland. I've got part in the U.S., UK as well. So it's Australia, pretty broad.
Got it. Okay. So the National Football League is the big pro organization here, and he
They'll
worked
probably
for.
know that.
Okay. All right. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, whenever people
No, it's
start
a fair
talking about,
question. It's a fair
yeah,
question.
it's like you start talking about National Rugby League and Rugby Union, and start throwing out teams in footy, and I'm lost. So, but yeah, so that he was with two of those organizations. There's another guy named Kirk Woolfolk who left that small school to go to be the director at University at Notre Dame, and then to our Naval Academy, and he is still there. Like 30 years later, he's still there. It's not that long, but I mean that would have been that. That's probably 25 years. Wow. Okay. I'm getting old. Now, then there was the third guy named Rob Rogers, who at that time was at Baylor, and he'd been all around in all these different pro organizations. And now he's doing military stuff. And if I were to pick one of those three, I would say it was Rob, because here I am. And all three of them, I've got to give the utmost credit to these three men.
How old were
Uh,
you?
I was 13,
Hmm.
right? I wasn't even 14 yet. And I'd already been lifting weights for about a year, right? And I had just talked to these guys and talked their ear off, and I have so many questions about, how this works, how that works, how, all these different things. And they spoke to me, looking back, hindsight being 2020, as a professional. They were talking to this 13-year-old punk as that they would talk to a intern or graduate assistant or things like that. They showed me that level of respect.
Hmm.
And honestly, if they would not have shown me that level of respect and talked to me and given me books to read, uh, I doubt that I would be here. I probably would have gotten turned off and not left that camp so fired up and known that that's what I want to do. So they're the kudos to them for treating me with respect, as I see so many coaches don't do with kids anymore. All right, don't waste my time, kid. Well, if they wouldn't have wasted their time, I wouldn't be me. And that's something that I always try to remember. And
Is
that's
that
why I'm always trying to return people's emails and things. But unfortunately, now the more that I find out, the more that, with the obviously the filter thing, how many other emails are people sending me that aren't getting through? And I'm talking like that now, I look like a dick because these email filters aren't going through. So, that going along those lines, if anybody wants to get a hold of me, do it on social media, because I know I'll get that crap. I don't know what's not coming through on my email.
yeah, it's but I guess you do reach there's got to be a critical point somewhere where answering people's emails and answering requests does become
Oh yeah, it gets a little bit, a little tedious. Sometimes it's a one sentence, but I try and get back to everybody. It might be yes, no, that's a good idea. Explore that, and some people might be, and I know some people have gotten upset and called me everything but a child of God because I got back to them with a 2-sentence email, or I'm not responding to them for the 7th email about how they should think about something else. Like, dude, don't ask me how you should think about this. My brain is my brain. Your brain is your brain. You think what you think. I think what I think. I'm not in there trying to make all your decisions for you. I'm not your conscience. So I don't handle those very well. I just usually end up not responding. So I guess if you've had multiple emails with me and then all of a sudden I don't respond, you might look back at that and see how you were doing things.
how should people work to develop their own perspective and their own thinking?
Man, it's through analysis of your own program. Because of course, you could look at research, and that's going to give you an idea and a thought process of how that you could progress, right? But uh, the you've got to just go in there for yourself, because with the research, you've got to read the methods, and you got to look and see what were these people, what had they done before, why did your athletes respond differently than theirs? Well, they did different training before they came into the study. Your athletes, if you've set them up a certain way, so they're going to respond the way that they're going to respond. It's not broad. So I think that you've got to step back and analyze things for yourself. You can Google how to do a t-test, how to do an ANOVA in Excel, right? So it's not like you've got to do a tremendous amount. You just have to do you've just got to be introspective and retrospective. Look back at things. Look at transfer indexes. Like that Vladimir Zatsiorsky. Let's see, what page is it? I got the new copy somewhere. Maybe I packed it up already. Let me go look.
So for those listening, Brian's just looking on the shelf to find the Zatsiorsky copy. We'll give him a minute.
It appears that I may have packed that up already. But, Vladimir Zatsiorsky, he has that transfer index. It's in the beginning of the book. Damn.
What's the title of the book for those who are maybe looking for it as well?
Science and Practice of Strength Training. I don't know what it is in the second edition, but I had a copy of the first edition that I think somebody walked off with. And why I'm getting angry right now is if somebody walked off with this one and Andy Fry signed it, I'm going to be pissed. If this
That's such a good book. I remember before I started coaching, that was the book that I would carry to work. I was painting houses in Vancouver, Canada, and I would take the bus to work. And that's the book that I took in my bag. And I was reading that on the bus. And one day I came home from work and my wife saw the book and she was like, you need to start getting paid for all that reading that you're doing. Like, this is just, you're carrying way too much reading material given that it's got nothing to do with your current line of work, and you've got to do something about that. So I'll give many thanks to my wife for pushing me to actually do something about it.
Yeah, I'll say this, that my wife has definitely pushed me to do things in the it's like, okay, well, this isn't making us any money, why the hell are you doing it? And so giving me some inspiration there on things like that, giving me the push or the square kick in the ass. I don't know which one it would be, but it's one of the two. Yeah, I can't find it, so it's driving me nuts. But basically, what it is the transfer index is you just calculate effect sizes and you divide one by the other.
Mhm.
The numerator's got to be the one that is the untrained. So your typically your key performance index, and then you divide that by the effect size of the trained exercise, and then the bigger the number, the larger the transfer that you get from there.
Mhm.
Um, so that's one of the things that it's especially if you look at things retrospectively, you can find out where your big rocks actually lied. For us, if somebody hadn't lifted weights before, right, getting their squat made it stronger, made them faster. As soon as that happened, after they got about somewhere between 1.7 and 2 times body weight squat, the transfer dropped to really small,
Mhm.
and improvement in body composition actually was the number one. So sometimes it was speed and change of direction were not so much technical or strength issues as they were nutrition
Mhm.
issues. And so that's something that I found from looking back at 15 years worth of data. And I would not have done that. I would not have thought about it that way. I would not have looked at it that way. But
How often do you do that? How often do you go back and look at what you wrote or what you did and what you collected? Do you have a schedule? Do you sit down every so often to do that?
So here's how I do things now is, because I'm not coaching currently. I'm doing just sports science things here with the athletes.
Mhm.
That whenever somebody does a training period, if they want me to look at it, I will. I didn't start doing that. It's kind of funny that you can read something 5 times, and unless you are ready for it, you're not going to get it. And the transfer index was one of those things for me that it was about 3 or 4 years ago that I was rereading Science and Practice for some reason. I think I was looking to try and find a specific reference. So then I got to go back and find the page for whatever journal this happened to be, and I got rejected anyways. But I found I saw that transfer index, and whenever I was reading it, all of a sudden the lights came on, and I'm like, holy cow! I've been missing this thing for 14 years, and here it is, or however long it had been at that point,
Mhm.
and probably like 18 years. And then all of a sudden I went back and did all of the stuff that we did for 15 years at Mizzou. And I'm like, holy cow, look at that. And then you can break things down too by looking at, how did it impact people from a relative strength standpoint? Did it change, for that? And that's just groupings,
Mhm.
whenever you get down to it. And that's, and I recommend people use Excel just because you can, use if then statements and things like that to run your groupings to automate it. So
Mhm.
it'll be a little bit of time on the front end, learning how to write an equation, but then that's click and drag. And if you've got 500 and some odd guys, that click and drag becomes really, really important. Uh, and that's what I was dealing with. But yeah, it wasn't until I read it, for the fifth time that it clicked, and then I saw how useful it was.
I guess that's the beauty of you know different perspectives. It's funny to think about it and it makes sense when you think about yourself. You're like, well, I had a new perspective. I had seen other things in the meantime, so that
Yeah,
information I could now relate to in such a different way. But we never think about it when we consider other people's points of view. We don't think,
yeah,
hey, that person has a completely different point of view than mine. I can't even fathom that being a thing. Yet maybe yourself over a few months or a few years you would find yourself in that same position where you completely change your perspective. How do you deal with that in terms of when somebody comes to you with whether it's and I guess now you do have, like I said, almost a quarter of a century's worth of experience in the field, but maybe earlier on, how did you deal with different perspectives, things that didn't make sense for you at that time? Did you discard them? Did you try to see where they might fit your current model? How do you do that?
well, earlier on, um, man, arrogance was my, uh, I guess, my enemy. It should have been my enemy. I was very, very young and arrogant because Dunning Kruger is a thing. I tell people I was far smarter as a 19-year-old strength coach than I am now as a 42-year-old scientist and
Mhm.
PhD and practitioner. So back in the day, if it wasn't what I thought, I discarded it and thought it was heresy. That there's no way that that this is it. So for me, it was strength alone, more strength. Oh, they're not getting stronger, and they're at a triple body weight squat. You got to get them a 4-time body weight squat, and they'll be blah blah blah. And then eventually, as you know, the introspection and learning that, man, some things I'm wrong on, and just gaining more and more insight actually allowed me to be more and more open.
Mm,
And then, and that's really it. You know, they say that knowledge, you know, is I'm sorry, experience is the ultimate teacher. And that's very true. That it wasn't until that I tried these different things, and all of a sudden I'm like, well, hell, I thought this was going to work. How come it didn't work? And whenever I did that multiple times in a row, you know, you learn that sometimes what you thought was gospel was not, and you're wrong, and it's okay to be wrong. And you know, there were so long that I just avoided. I started out by avoiding analysis of my program
mm.
because I didn't want to see that my athletes weren't running faster and weren't jumping higher as a result of what we've been doing, because we're doing powerlifting training. Why are we doing powerlifting training? Well, I wrote the book Powerlifting, for God's sake, just came out with new edition. All right. Sucker's right here.
Those who are listening, come watch the video and you can see
Yeah.
the cover of.
Don't watch the video because you're going to be seeing how nasty my office is as we're packing up. But, you know, here it is in English. Here it is in Spanish. I think we got German or something else.
Nice.
But, you know, so that was my background.
Mm-hmm.
And so, of course, I wrote my programs for that. And it wasn't until later that I realized that we've all got cognitive biases, that everything is shaped by the lens with which we examine the world. So that lens that I saw through, that everything was strength, well, you know, that was it. And it wasn't until later, whenever I was like, oh, wait, velocity into the spectrum too. Oh, shoot. Oh, okay. Well, let's look at what actually, you know, causes these things to improve. Just getting a bigger squat's not going to help everything, unless you're going to be a power lifter. And, you know, there's a reason why powerlifters don't have all the world records for every event of every track and field thing and every swimming and all those things, because strength has a limited transfer.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, we can improve things like joint angle specificity and firing patterns and things like that. But then we're not doing just the squat, bench, and deadlift anymore. So we're not doing the powerlifting training. And sometimes people have a problem with that. But as for me personally, it wasn't until I'm trying to remember what class it was, that I actually started to gain that introspection and learn and realize that it's okay that if you're not right, it doesn't mean you're a failure. It doesn't mean that you are the biggest POS in the world because your stuff didn't work. It's a good thing to find out what doesn't work. Sometimes it's more important to find out what doesn't work than it is what does, because then you don't waste your time again. And that's the biggest lesson that we've got to learn, is to not waste our time and not waste the athlete's time, but also understanding what is waste. You know, so for instance, there's a big argument that's out there right now, especially in the track and field space. I feel that, oh, you shouldn't be lifting weights. It's going to make you slow. Okay, well, it's not going to make you slow. It might not make you faster, but it's probably not going to make you slower unless you start putting on muscle mass, and then that throws off your strength to mass ratio. But you know what it does do still, even if it's not making you faster? It makes your tissues more able to withstand stress. So then it makes you recover quicker, and it makes you less likely to get hurt. So is that a bad thing? Well, no, that's a really good thing, because then you could withstand more training to have higher speed results. So I think that, you know, just as that aging process occurs, the experiential process, and actually having a formal evaluative process, allowing you to stand up to that 35,000 foot view,
Mm-hmm.
that's whenever all of a sudden you get to be a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you're able to take that bird's eye view rather than not be able to see the forest for the trees.
How did the shift happen for you, coming from the powerlifting, having written the book? You know, it's part of your identity. Once you
Yeah.
have to, how do you start moving away from the thing you were originally known for, or the thing that makes you who you are? Well, what does a transition look like? And maybe if you have any, you know, tips or advice for people that might be going through it, or might at some point have to go through it, because you can't Well, sometimes you do. I guess you could always be, doing the thing that you were known for in the first place, but oftentimes you're going to evolve, and that might not always, match. So how do you go through that evolution?
So and it comes back to the statistics and the evaluation. And all of a sudden, whenever I found out that, oh my God, these guys were actually getting slower from doing this, I'm trying to make them faster and jump higher, but they're slower and they're not jumping high and their power is lower, right? Whenever I use the Sayers equation. And even, I didn't know about sprint momentum back then, but, their momentum wasn't changing. Well, then you're doing something wrong. So, you got to look at it from a new lens. When did that happen? About 2014 is whenever I really had my eyes completely open. Now, there was a gradual shift, and the gradual shift occurred because I'm hard-headed, to be frank. That and I'm a contrarian. So if you tell me you can't do something one way, I am going to do it that way just to show you that you don't know what you're talking about. So everybody used to say that the only way to develop athletes is through Olympic weightlifting, and that's the way you have to do. So I started out doing powerlifting and then the West Side method, the conjugate, using dynamic effort and things like that to drive the adaptations. And I was getting just as good results in the power and speed as others. And then one time through my working with the different things with velocity, I realized that an Olympic weightlifting movement is nothing other than a speed strength stimulus. The same as if I were to go high band resistance with low bar weight on a squat, I could get speed strength from there. I could get speed strength from the Olympic weightlifting movement. Neither one of them were sprinkled with pixie dust so that they had some magic adaptation. It's specific adaptations to impose demands. The body doesn't care what that stimulus is. It just cares that it's getting that speed strength stimulus. So, whenever I started looking at it that way, that, I need something for speed strength. Well, I could squat, I could clean, I could pull, I could snatch, I could, I've got all these different variations to go with. And once I realized that, then it started to open my world up. So that part of it happened probably in about 2007, 2008, whenever I started to see that, and also realized that there was some mistranslations going on. I mean, sometimes you'll get people who are highly intelligent, but if there was some sort of mistranslation, then that drives everything wrong in the field going forward. We could look back with plyometric versus pleometric with Fred Wilt, who read some of Yuri's translated works while he was the coach at Purdue, and then propagated from there. Well, there was a mistranslation between plyo and pleo, and then that led to a lot of confusion as to what things should be called. Where should it be called jump training? Should it be called plyometric, or should it be called shock method? And those are three very, very different training adaptations. So, to say that they're the same is the dumbest freaking thing I've ever heard of. And it's, I get up on a soapbox about that quite often. Matter of fact, I just tweeted out about it the other day because I was pissed off about it. But, there's that. So, gosh, it's a tough question to really ask. It's like, how did this happen? Man, for me, it just happened. I wish that I was smart enough to be able to go back and be introspective enough with my retrospection to be able to pick up why did that happen, and I'm not. It was a part of my natural progression and my inquisitive nature. And then I could also remember this specifically, that there was one point in time whenever I realized that I'd been wrong on some things, and things that I thought were gospel, and it led to depression. So, whenever that occurs, it's okay, guys. You don't have to, it's okay to be wrong. Have that license that it's okay to be wrong.
Do you think it's a, do you think it happens on the level of the individual, maybe the ego of, not wanting to be
Dude,
wrong?
100% ego.
But
yeah, at least for me.
Is there any part of maybe the societies that we live in and the inference of the educational structures through which we have gone through and what we've learned, is there maybe too much of an incentive to get things right all the time through that as well? What do you think?
I don't know if it's that, or I don't know if it was just me,
Mm.
because I hate to be wrong, and and it just so I don't know if it's a societal thing or if it's just me. My wife is always angry at me. Like if I'm wrong on something, I get pissed and just start cussing and everything like that. She's like, "Why are you so angry? I was wrong about this. Why does that matter?" Well, whenever you get down to it, at the end of the day, what happened? If you're wrong on something, did the sun collapse out of the sky? Did the earth shake and open up? No, it didn't. The sun rose. I just saw a flock of parrots this morning while I was walking my dog. That was pretty cool. Uh, Things that I could say now that I never thought I would ever say before. Oh, this whole flock of parrots flying outside my house. Um, but it's okay to be wrong. What happens by being wrong? The only thing that happens, the only bad thing that happens, is you do it again because your ego doesn't allow you to accept it,
Mm.
right? But otherwise, it's positive. My friend Brett Bartholomew, I always heard him say when we were out drinking, "Failure's fertilizer," and yeah, it's true that things happen as they do, and then also it's like in the thing, man. I was talking with a friend of mine yesterday on the phone, and he had something that was so succinct that it stopped me, and I couldn't hear what he was saying for the next 10 minutes. The Wright brothers didn't invent the 747. So what you do now is going to evolve over time. And it might look nothing like what it did when you first started. The 747 and the plane that they flew at Kitty Hawk in 1903 look nothing alike. And that's okay. And I think that we need to be able to get on with ourselves and get over ourselves and be able to move on and have a more positive impact on life
How do you
moving forward.
how do you try to, maybe bring this to the people that you work with, young coaches, like you said, maybe not athletes today, but athletes that you've worked with in the past, or through your, your books, your speaking engagements, the courses? How do you try and further that idea that it is through failure that we are going to learn, and that making mistakes is okay, and that we shouldn't be expected to get it all right from the get-go?
Yeah, in the classes, that's the easy part because I'll just tell stories and show it's like, hey, okay, here's what I thought, here's what I did, and I was wrong, and I share those with them just so that and I try to do that whenever I speak and things like that. I don't, for some reason, this really came to light to me this past week at the NSCA National Conference. I gave the keynote, and uh, people coming up to me and talking to me like, I'm Bill Kramer, Mike Stone, or something like that. Like these guys that I swear to all things holy have had, God lift off the top of their head and put knowledge into it, and so that they can spit out gold. But that for some reason, some of these people tend to think that just because you've done a lot, that you're infallible. And I make it a point to bring up my failures in talks so that they can see that, hey, if he thinks it's okay to fail, it's okay if I fail, because I thought that if I failed earlier on in my career, that I was done for, that there was no coming back from this, and
Mhm.
that couldn't be further from the truth. I'll take if I was looking for a trainer, I would look for the one who was preaching things entirely different from what he did, and he has got a bunch of scars on him, right? Because he learned what not to do. Well, I don't want to be the one they learn what not to do on, right? So that's why we go to them. Failure's fine. Failure's fertilizer, and I just try and bring that up. And the way that I always bring things up is, there's a book called, it's probably packed up, called Hagakure, right? It's I think it was written by Miyamoto Musashi or something like that. He was he might have been the guy that did the Book of Five Rings. Now that I stop and think about it, but it was a written record of the stories of the samurai, what they would tell, and people have not changed in millennia, right? So we're the same, like, okay, language is different. Oh, what do you mean we're not different? Now we're fat because we drive everywhere versus walk and ride horses. Like, yeah, well, whatever, but your human nature has not changed much. And one of the things that they had said in there, and this stuck with me, and it went with the way that I coach, the way that I deal with students, it still drives a lot of these things, is that you never directly confront somebody. Because what if I were to start pushing you, Sean, right now, you would push back. You want to maintain your space. Well, physically, that's easy to see, but emotionally,
Mm.
cognitively, the exact same thing happens. So if I tell you you're wrong, and this is a failure of my part that I learned from, if I tell you you're wrong and here's why, you're just immediately going to get defensive. But if I lead you with a story about my own life and my own experiences that you can see as if it's in a movie and not happening to you, then you can make the connections for yourself and cause the change to occur. And sometimes that change doesn't happen, and that's okay because they didn't get it. You have a chance to come back and do it again and try another way. But if I would have come at you directly and confronted you and pushed you, I just pushed you away. And now it's harder for me to be able to reach you in the future. So, I always try and teach through stories so that if you're ready for it, you'll get it. There's that old Chinese proverb, when the student is ready, the teacher appears. It couldn't be more true. Is that no, I was there. The teacher was always there. The teacher was always ready. You just didn't see him. You just weren't ready for it. So, you've got to wait and allow that to occur. So I try and do that through story. If there's, anytime that I'm at a conference and it's somebody else's talk and they'll have something to share that might be negative, right? They'll ask for somebody to do that. I stand up and do it right away. I want to be one of the first ones. So then that allows other people to open up and, not be seen as weak. I try and be vulnerable with people. I try and do this. I try and do that because, like Mahatma Gandhi said, we must be the change we wish to see in the world. If I want to see people who are more mature, sharing, and are telling people it's okay to be wrong. It's okay to do these things. It's okay to need help. It's okay. Then I need to be the one sharing these messages. I preach mental health care for strength and conditioning coaches, and it's like, why? Well, I've been one of the people that's battled depression. You know, uh, it's okay. It's not a sign of weakness to need help.
Mm.
And get out there and bang that drum, because what do we do as coaches? We do things that aren't natural. You're not. There's a reason why the labor boards came in and shut down the 90-hour work weeks that were going on, the 7-day a week, 15 hours a day. So that's 105 hours a week, even for a quarter a day. They shut down all of those for a reason, because it wasn't healthy. And we don't need to be doing those sorts of things to ourselves as coaches. And if we do, we need to be able to seek the help that we need to survive. I've lost too many friends to suicide, and if I can, by me being open and honest uh, about my own struggles and about my own shortcomings and my own failures, if that's going to have some of my friends be here that wouldn't otherwise, I'll do that 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I'll tell that, and I'll get out there and bang that drum.
I want to come back to the mental health aspect that you just mentioned, but what I was thinking about when you talked about the way that you approach people now when you're trying to convey an idea, what came to mind is the idea of dialectic versus debate. And I feel like maybe today we're very caught up in debating people, and we always want to prove our point. And I have a huge amount of appreciation for people in a public conversation that are able to kind of strongman the other person's argument, highlight the areas that make a lot of sense, and then be very subtle and what's the word, very humble in the way that you approach a critique of someone else's idea of way of doing something, in order to be as constructive as possible. And like you said, not just go directly at someone. I feel like it's maybe something that's a little bit missing in today's world, where the focus is always on being right, and I guess that there's a listening part that's missing now out of this the dynamic that has to happen.
Yeah, there was a couple of years ago, you said something. I started chuckling because it reminded me of something that popped into my head the other day. Gosh, it's been a year or two ago now that, there's that old adage, you've got two ears and one mouth for a reason. Well, now in our age of digital communication where everything's done from a keyboard, I see the problem. We've got 10 fingers and two ears.
Mm, that's a good way of
So
putting it.
yeah, we need to make sure, yeah, yeah, that's the problem. If you've got 10 fingers and two ears and you're using your fingers a lot more than you're using your ears, or you're using your mouth a lot more than you're using your ears, you're the problem.
And
And
it's sorry to cut you off. But it's even in person. I mean, even though it's harder in person to
yeah,
be mean to someone that's in front of you,
right.
I feel like that's because there is the emotion, and that's I think, without going too far into the weeds, one of the downsides of many interactions that we get online is that they're completely stripped from all the emotional feedback and context that we usually have conversations in as humans. You talked about the human nature before that has not changed. The fact of needing relationships, seeing
Yep.
somebody else's face, seeing a smile, seeing a frown, understanding what the person has understood or not, that's not part of it. But we still have a hard time with I don't know, having difficult conversations. Is that a thing anymore? Like, do we do that enough? Should we do more of it?
I think we need to have more difficult conversations, but we also need to be respectful and realize, that and be able to see things from the other person's point of view. So I think we need to have difficult conversations with empathy, I
Mm.
guess would be the way to put it. And that is definitely a lost art, because we went through this whole, gosh, so and I'm saying this without thinking about it beforehand and choosing my words as carefully as I'd like. But we've gone through this whole generation of self-help books that I'm okay, you're an asshole, and I mean I don't know if that's actually a title of a book or not, but how to win friends and influence people and all these other things about manipulation versus getting down to self-improvement and self-reflection. And I think that's part of the problem is that we've got to be able to make sure that we're addressing things and seeing the whole picture, not just what you see. Yeah, because if I excuse me, the over here in the States, they've got this Mountain Dew. Now, it's a soda and it's usually got a lot of caffeine in it. But now they got this Mountain Dew Zero and it's got more caffeine in it and no sugar. So that's what I'm having this morning. But unfortunately, I made the mistake of having this for the first time, and the carbonation in it is nuts. So I hopefully you don't have to. Hopefully, my gain is down low enough that you don't have to wipe out the belch that just happened there. So I
I didn't hear
apologize for
I
that.
didn't hear a thing.
Oh,
You're
thank
good.
God. I got the gain low enough on this mic. That's a good thing about having good mics. I completely forgot what we were talking about here.
We were talking
Yeah.
about of seeing the other point of view and being
Oh,
able to
yeah.
be respectful in interactions and hard conversations.
Yeah. Because there's been many times whenever I thought, dude, it just happened yesterday on Twitter. Lance Walker and myself were talking about something with Donnell Boucher, and I'm coming back at Lance and he's coming back at me, and we're good friends. So I'm like, dude, okay, I think I understand what you're saying, but let's talk on the phone later for context. That a lot of times it's, you've just got a different viewpoint. Why? Okay, well, let's explain this. Not that you said A, I think B, so you're wrong. No, because everything is so conditional. We're
Mm.
humans. We've got how many different systems working at the same time? There's so many moving parts. And whenever you throw previous training on top of it, I mean, there's just, it's unreal with how
Mm.
the way things move.
Do you think there's a something that young coaches should strive towards, or coaches in general should strive towards, in order to maybe put that, I don't know, the expression in French is to put the church back in the center of the village, but to try and maybe improve that, public discourse, or to improve that, um, you know, uh, try to improve the way that we interact as professionals in a field that is far from having, figured out all the complexities of the human body, as, or at least not as much as we think we have, given what we're working with, which is probably the most advanced technology that's currently available on planet Earth, which is, the human body and the brain, that we don't really have an idea, or not a at least not as solid a grasp as I thought we did when I started in the field a few years
Yeah.
ago. How can we do better? How can we talk better? How can we interact better and grow together?
Here's what I think. And that's a very poignant statement, that French statement, take the church back to the center of town. It's like, I'm not a religious person, but I definitely get where the point that they're coming from.
Mm-hmm.
And that, just taking a second to gather it, to put it in, to see if I can choose the right words here, is that there's an old saying that societies become great when old men plant trees that they will never know the shade of. And if we were to, as a field and as a society, go back to that, to doing what is going to be best for the next person, how can I make this better for them? Then we're going to make a drive as a society. I don't know if it's too late for that. I think that statement falls upon deaf ears. And, that's something that I've always tried to do, is like, whoever is coming in as the next faculty member, that they're going to walk into it better than what I had it. Now, sometimes what I think of as better, they might think of as dog shit, and that's completely possible too, right?
Mm.
Because we're going to have different opinions on what's important. But at least I'm trying to leave it better. And if we would do that sort of thing as a society, worldwide, I think we would be doing better off. All the microplastics that are currently in the ocean and infecting our food supply, and the space debris that's out there that actually is getting to the point where that, you might not make it back because a paint chip traveling 5,000 miles an hour. I don't know how fast they actually travel. I have to ask my father-in-law about this, because my father-in-law is actually a what I would call a no shit rocket scientist. He actually, like, he really is a rocket scientist.
Mm.
He's done some super cool stuff that I'm not at liberty to say what some of it was. But that we would not have the problems that we have now. And I think communication would go around. And I think people need to travel, because God knows that that's given me a far different perspective. I mean, there was one time that on a trip to China, we were met as soon as we landed, basically, by a guy, translator and everything. And then, I was reliant upon him. And then whenever in their customs, like, he would just tell me what to do. When they dropped me off at the airport in Beijing, I didn't realize that I had to go through security to get my ticket. So here I am walking up and down looking for a ticket counter so I can go through security. And I do this for an hour, right? And I'm starting to freak out. Like, I don't know what any of these characters mean. Nobody speaks any language that I could even, because I got a little bit of Spanish. I'd had a little bit of Spanish then. I've got some now. I'm going to die in a foreign country, because I don't know how to get my ticket. I'm not going to see my wife. She was pregnant. It's like, I'm not going to see my kid. Oh my God, I'm panicking. So now, of course, I treat foreign people, visitors, with a lot more respect, and try and help them, because I've experienced that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. Eventually, somebody noticed that I was panicking a little bit, and was like, he's said in very broken English, "You look like you need help." I do. And
yes, please.
And he says, what airline? I told him. He goes, "Go through here." I go, "I don't have my ticket." "Go through here, get ticket." And then fortunately, I saw somebody with a Gamecocks shirt on. And, for those that don't know, that's the mascot for the University of South Carolina. And that's not like this big international, school that everybody would be wearing stuff at, like, the U or Florida State or something like that. So I'm like, that dude speaks English. I'm going with him. And so that's who I latched onto until I got to the plane. But, so that you've got to have those sorts of experiences. Otherwise you won't develop empathy. But it's that mindset of making things better for the next person, that next generation, of coaches that comes through, of researchers, of, everything. It's that mindset that's going to allow us to go forward, not anything else.
And tying that back to what you were saying at the beginning of the podcast, is you have to think about yourself. You need to advance your own career, but then you also have to play on the other levels, right? We can't just be And it's not one. I don't think, at least I don't think it's one or the other. It's not you either work for yourself or you work for the other ones. It's both. You have to do what you want to do, and go towards things that make you fulfilled and make you want to get up in the morning and do your job well and advance what you're doing, your athletes, the people that you work with. And then beyond, like you said, you have to, this has to radiate outwards to bigger groups and to your community and to maybe your town and maybe even beyond, depending on who you are. But you have to play on all those different levels. You can't just stay stuck in one or the other.
Yeah, dude, it gets back to invisible hand theory versus game theory. If you want to go back to economics, right?
Mm-hmm.
John Adam Smith is do what's best for you, and the market will correct itself. Or John Nash was you do what's best for you and society, and that was game theory, and then everything else will drive itself. So,
Mm-hmm.
it comes down to game theory, man. It's not just about the money. It's about everything in life. And if you haven't, you're like, what the hell is he talking about? Well, one, you could read about it, of course, or two, you could go watch. Oh my God, what is that? Beautiful Mind, an amazing movie on
Mm-hmm.
the life of John Nash. That who was a brilliant mind, but had some issues with it.
Mm-hmm. I want to finish on a topic that you mentioned and that I know is important to you, the mental health aspect. You also mentioned the importance of, the important role that your wife plays in your life.
Hmm.
I feel the same way about my wife. I feel like many of the big decisions that I've had to make so far in my measly 6 or 7 years since I started coaching, many of them, were done either she pushed me to do them or it was done with her in terms of communication. So can you, and it's probably something we don't talk about enough. We like to talk about ourselves and what we do and our jobs,
Yeah.
but the people that we have around us are very important. So how important is this aspect of your life to you? And I'll leave it at that.
Yeah, man, my family, it's my wife and kids, my kid. Oh my God, my kids, just even thinking about them, I can feel a little bit of warmth inside, Uh, but it's definitely, given different perspective. Yeah, that whenever you have kids, you don't live your own life. You live your life for your kids. And, and that's what's changed a tremendous amount. Some things are easier. Some things are harder having kids, you know, uh, man. So do you have kids, Sean?
I do.
Yeah. So yeah, you're smiling because you know exactly the thing I'm talking about, man. Sometimes it's you're wondering what in the hell that you were thinking. And sometimes you can't imagine life without them, and and watching them grow up is absolutely amazing. How to balance that is that I got some really really good advice from a guy named Donnie Mabe, who's the director of Olympic sports at the University of Texas. He's been there forever. He's a pastor. He's a massage therapist. He's a great man, and I always cherish every time that I get to spend time with Donnie. And he had this example that life is a juggling act, and there's a lot of balls that you've got to keep in the air. You've got to keep your job. You've got your car, your vehicles, your friends. You've got your family, right? And most of these balls are rubber. If you drop one of these balls, nothing really bad happens. But that family ball, that one's glass. You drop that ball, it breaks. You can always find another job. Car goes wrong, find another car. Food gets rotten, you go get more food. There's so many different things that you can replace. But that family ball, that one's glass. You can't drop that one. So whatever you do, make sure that you're keeping that family ball in the air. And that was something that I try to do. I don't do the greatest stuff because I'm a workaholic. Um, from like I had mentioned before, for my kids, it's like I want to make sure they didn't go through some of the same things I did, and that's a very much a cognitive distortion for me for the things that I went through that I don't want them to go through. That I will work myself to oblivion to make sure that that never happens for them. Um, So, but having that thought process and that mind that realize that, hey, you know what, I might get fired for seeing my kids, but I still got that ball. That other ball will drop and it'll bounce, and I could change careers if I need to. If this ends up not being right for my kids, I'll go do something else. I'll go, I'm not going to flip burgers at McDonald's. I did that already, and that sucked. But, I'll go, I'll go do something. What is it? I don't know. I'll go talk to a headhunter. In the U.S., they got these. I don't know what they're actually called, but sometimes they call them headhunters. That's like, okay, I've got this skill set. I need a job. I need to change career. What do you think? What should I go look at? Hook me up with something. And then they, go and they'll help you find a new job and a new career. There's a different term for them. I learned it as a headhunter way back in the day, and
Career
that's really
advisor.
yeah, that's probably a better one. Yeah, because I always think about those little tiny freaking heads, sitting up there, and that's I still think about that to this day. But you can always go do something else. But yeah, you can't. Yeah, if you lose your kids, you lose your kids' love and affection, you'll never get that back. And I would not want to imagine what that pain would feel like. So, that's if they listen to nothing else, man, if you got family, take care of that family. That's why whenever my kids came, that $100 for 3 days of work, no, you got to pay now. And it's not that you're paying me. The information I give you is probably the same. You're not paying for the information. I'll tell you, damn near anything. You read my articles, read my books, take the courses that I offer through various places, Stronger Experts, Strength Coach Network, and even here at University of Miami. We got some online coach education stuff here. I'll give you that stuff. You're paying for me to be gone. And, that's the way that I look at it now. I probably went way off topic on that, and I apologize.
Well, I kind of appreciate it because in the little email exchange we had before the podcast, you said you're known for VBT, APRE, and either for good or for bad. And I'm glad that we were able to maybe go into other dimensions today a little bit and talk about you and the other things that I think many things that you have to bring to the table that people need to hear. And like you said, they can take your courses and read your books in many different places, but the few things that we talked about today, I think are just as important, if not more, because in a sense, they form the foundation to everything else that we're trying to accomplish in our job. And so it can't be stated enough, in my opinion. So thanks so much for coming on the show today and, being open and, like you said, talking about all those different topics that maybe are not the most popular and maybe it won't get all the crazy tweets, but I think we've covered some solid ground, and I'm glad we could do that today, man.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. My pleasure. Anytime you want to talk about training, sometime we can do that too. It'll probably be more entertaining for people, but it's not what they want to hear. It's probably what they need to hear. And God knows there's been many times whenever I need to hear something, and I sure as shit don't want to hear it. So. Yeah.
Isn't that the truth, Bryan? Where can people find out more about you if they want to read your books, take your courses, and learn more?
Yeah, so I've got the velocity-based training course through Stronger Experts. I think it's just strongerexperts.com. That's the thing that I've gone to give to multiple professional teams and things like that. And whenever there's a question that pops up, Phil usually lets me know, and I hop on there to type up an answer. My laptop went down and they have not figured out what it is yet. Oh, we'll have it back to you in 2 days. My ass will have it back to me in 2 days. So I'm probably just going to buy a new laptop. But so then I recorded videos and things like that to try and help out there. If they're wanting to go more on like the physiology side of things, I've done a lot for the Strength Coach Network. I think like 6 or 7 of their entry level. I say entry level. I don't know what the fuck they call it. I just dropped an F-bomb. I'm sorry. That caffeine is starting to wear off. My filter's going away. That they want to go there. The long story short, if you find me on Instagram, right, it's Bryan Mann, Bryan Mann. I have got one of those link tree things that one of my students taught me into getting, and it's got all my crap on there. so that, if you just go, you find that you'll get a direct link to any of that stuff. My YouTube channel that I put up, information on, like, we go over a lot of studies in my classes. And if the students have a question on a study that I think would be good for strength coaches to know, then I just record it on my YouTube channel. And so that everybody, someone that's doing double duty. We've got a general, so if you're new to strength and conditioning entirely, you don't know where to start, I've got a general strength and conditioning course through, I think it's like elevate.miami.edu or something like that. But again, I've got that on my link tree. The Elite FTS, Simply Faster, written a lot of articles for both of them. ResearchGate, I'm on there. Post. I don't do a very good job of posting the articles up on there just because I'm afraid of getting sued. Because I can see, like, Sci-Hub has gotten shut down multiple times, and I'm just afraid of I'm afraid of being that person that got that letter from Napster or whatever back in the day, that Metallica suing you for $30 million or something. I didn't want to be one of those guys. But yeah, if you can find me on Instagram, just Bryan Mann on Instagram, go to that bio thing that's a link tree, and you could find all the books that I've written on APRE and VBT. A new edition just came out there. I think the powerlifting book, I put that on there, but Human Kinetics does a great job of advertising, so I don't feel like I've got to do that. And there's other things too, I'm sure. I've got links to all to my landing pages for authors for Elite FTS and for Simply Faster, so you can pretty much find 80% of the things that I've written, but just by going there.
Okay, you heard the man. His Instagram link is in the podcast description, so go click that. Go click his link tree, and then go get all the info that you might need. Bryan, again, thank you so much for coming on the show today. It was a pleasure.
My pleasure. My pleasure.
Take care, man.
You too.